The morning the shot rang out, the sky was painfully blue, the kind of blue that tricks you into believing nothing bad can happen beneath it. I remember that because my wife, Lena, had just said the same thing as she stepped off our porch. One hand resting on her belly, the other waving goodbye to me through the kitchen window. She was 7 months pregnant, glowing in that quiet, sacred way that made time slow around her. We had moved into Silver Pines Estates 2 years earlier, a gated HOA community that promised peace, order, and prestige. What it delivered was control. Rules stapled to doors. Fines for shadows falling the wrong way. And at the center of it all was Marjorie Halloway, a president, self-appointed queen, and the kind of woman who smiled while tightening a noose. She hated us from the start. Not loudly, not openly, but in the way that emails arrived at 3 a.m. accusing us of unauthorized plant growth, in the way our mailbox was inspected weekly, in the way she stared at Lena's belly once and said, "Children lower property values when they cry." That morning, Lena had gone to confront her. Not to fight, never that. She wanted to ask why our driveway had been flagged for structural noncompliance when it hadn't changed in 10 years. I told her I'd come with her. She smiled and said she'd be fine. I watched her walk down the street. I never saw her fall. The sound came next. A crack. Sharp. Wrong. The kind of sound your brain refuses to understand until your body already knows. I ran. Neighbors opened doors. Someone screamed. I found her on the pavement, blood darkening the fabric of her maternity dress, her eyes wide with shock more than pain. Marjorie stood 10 feet away, phone in hand, shaking not in fear but in outrage. "She came at me," she said. I felt threatened. There was no weapon near Lena. There never had been. The ambulance arrived. Then the police. Then the silence that falls when a neighborhood realizes something irreversible has happened. Lena survived. Our daughter survived. But the damage ran deep nerve trauma, months of recovery, and a fear that never fully loosened its grip. Marjorie was arrested that day, but she was released by nightfall. HOA lawyers moved fast. Statements were rewritten. Stories softened. Self-defense echoed through the halls like a prayer. It wasn't a neighborhood. It was a fortress of money and influence. The HOA owned shell companies. The board members were developers, investors, retired judges. They buried complaints. They erased records. They didn't just enforce rules, they manufactured reality. I tried to fight it the right way. I filed reports. I hired lawyers. I gathered evidence. I attended hearings where Marjorie sat 10 feet away, smirking, surrounded by men in tailored suits who spoke of unfortunate misunderstandings. Every time I spoke, I was interrupted. Every document I submitted went missing. Then one night, while Lena slept and our daughter's tiny breaths rose and fell between us, I opened an old file my father had left me. He'd been a civil engineer. Before he died, he'd transferred a deed to meal land bordering Silver Pines. At the time, it was worthless. Unstable soil, condemned structures, unbuildable, or so they thought. What they never knew was that my father had also left behind something else: proof, environmental reports, survey data, evidence that the HOA had illegally expanded their boundaries decades ago. That half of Silver Pines sat on land they never legally owned. I took it to the city. The response was slow at first, then urgent, then explosive. Investigations opened. Permits were frozen. Audits followed. And when the truth came out, it wasn't just zoning fraud. It was tax evasion, bribery, coercion, years of buried violations. Marjorie was arrested again, this time in front of cameras. The board resigned overnight. Lawsuits stacked higher than their manicured hedges. And then came the day the bulldozers arrived. Not mine, the city's. I stood with Lena at a safe distance, her hand in mine, our daughter asleep against her chest, as heavy machinery rolled in under court order. Entire sections of Silver Pines were condemned. Homes built illegally were slated for demolition. Roads were torn up. Gates were removed. People called it revenge. The news called it justice. Online, they called it the HOA that destroyed itself. But for me, it was something quieter. It was accountability. Marjorie was sentenced later that year. Not for the shooting, that case took longer, but for obstruction, fraud, and endangerment. Her empire dissolved. Her name vanished from plaques and newsletters. She became just another defendant in a long list of consequences. Lena still flinches at loud noises. Our daughter asks why we moved away from the pretty houses. I tell her that sometimes beautiful things hide rot, and it's okay to walk away. We live somewhere quieter now. No gates, no boards, no rules written in fear. Sometimes, when the wind is right, I can still hear the echo of that bulldozer metal against concrete, not destroying, but correcting. And I don't smile, I breathe, because for the first time since that blue morning, we're finally free.